let's decide on our target market rather than going, no, it's already decided for us, right? We need to go out, do research and find who buys our category. And once we know that, and we should have a deep understanding of that, then we can go on and be good marketers.
Marketing Architects.
Hello, and welcome to the Marketing Architects, a research-first podcast dedicated to answering your toughest marketing questions. I'm Elena Jasper, and I'm joined by my co-hosts, Angela Voss and Rob DeMars. And today we're joined by Byron Sharp, a professor of marketing science and director of the Ehrenberg-Bass Institute, the world's largest center for marketing research. Byron is a renowned thought leader in the field of evidence-based marketing, and he's the author of one of the most influential marketing books of the last decade, How Brands Grow What Marketers Don't Know, which is now essential reading for marketers around the world. We respect his contributions to research-driven marketing and have wanted to have this conversation with him for a long time. So welcome, Byron.
So good to have you. A legend.
Now, Elena did say we are a research-first podcast, and so research tells us that you grew up on a sheep farm. So you went from herding sheep to herding consumers. Any similarities there? Any empirical laws for herding sheep?
Well, it was my dad who was the sheep farmer. I'm not sure I helped out that much.
It was very hard to find personal information about you, so that was about the best we could do, was an opener about growing up on the farm. If that's a goal of yours, is to be very private online. I couldn't find anything else. All right, well, let's get into questions you'll want to answer. We're back with our thoughts on some recent marketing news. We're always trying to root our opinions in data, research, and what drives business results. Now, before we get into our interviews, I usually tee things up with an article or a piece of research, but with someone like Byron Sharp, who specializes in research, I almost had too much to choose from. So I decided to do something I've never done before, which is to ask you, Byron, about a topic that I actually haven't seen you publish a lot about, specifically by name. There doesn't seem to be one single definition of this, but from our experience, it's grown in popularity as a sort of movement in the US towards a greater focus on marketing that's more grounded in research and principles, which seems to align really well with your and Ehrenberg-Bass's work. But I haven't seen you focus on this in particular like others have. So I wanted to start with this question. What does marketing effectiveness mean to you, and do you find it valuable?
Well, I mean, obviously marketing effectiveness is, focused on effectiveness rather than and potentially efficiency, which is something that I and a number of people encourage. But I think you're referring to the sort of effectiveness movement. It's probably gone far too far. There's a lot of stuff in marketing that's called effectiveness, but it's actually sort of some weird efficiency or terrible metrics. There's a lot of stuff that's just justifying covering your butt. I've got these metrics. You sort of wave them like something to ward off evil spirits. That's not necessarily really doing effective marketing. At the Ehrenberg-Bass, you'll notice our website has no cookies. We track some very simple, trustworthy metrics. Very easy, very cheap to track is how many times you're mentioned in the media. We track things like that, which show our growing fame and reach around the world. But I'm a big fan of the Warren Buffett rule, which is he never invests in companies he can't work out how they're making money. Those companies are very dangerous, and often the answer is they're not making money. It's just a sham. And it's the same, when you're buying media, when you're looking at metrics, it should be it should be very trustworthy. People think like scientists are obsessed with numbers and accuracy and things. And no, that's the engineers, right? Scientists are much more concerned with generalizable patterns about how the world works. Andrew Ehrenberg once said the most important mathematical symbol, the equal signs with a little squiggle on top of it. It means, a roundabout. And then an engineer might have a specific thing where they go, okay, I've got Newton's laws or whatever, but I need to land this missile or plane or whatever exactly on the spot. Okay, well, then you get into levels of accuracy. But that's horses for courses. It's a practical thing for how much accuracy you need on the day, but that's not what scientists are obsessed with.
That's helpful. I wanted to make sure we were on the same page with our language, because some people say marketing effectiveness, and then there's marketing science, and evidence-based marketing is a term that's come from Ehrenberg-Bass.
Yeah, it's like marketing science. In fact, there's a journal in the States called Marketing Science. It's not really marketing science. It's a marketing engineering journal. It does lots of optimization and showing off fancy statistics, and this is far more important than the substantive findings. It's not a substantive finding-oriented journal. Some years back, the Nobel Prize for Physics was won for the discovery of graphene, right? It's a very important thing. This multi-billion-dollar industry is now built on graphene. It was always known to theoretically exist. What's that one molecule thick layer? It's incredibly strong. And researchers, they got some graphite and stuff that's in pencils, and they put some sticky tape on the side of it, and they kept shearing the sticky tape off, which would pull off very tiny layers until they actually got down to one molecule thick and proved that you could actually have graphene in the real world. That would never get accepted by any North American Marketing Journal. It would be like, what? You just use sticky tape. It's a very interesting descriptive discovery of the world, but, you need to sex it up with some statistical gymnastics or something really complicated because that's what we're about. That's not science.
Well, we are going to talk more about marketing research, but before we do, I've been trying to piece together your background based on LinkedIn stalking. And so it was like, okay, where did he start from? And so you're getting your master's and you were a professor, right?
No. In America, a professor is anyone at the university who teaches, right? In Australia, you start as like a tutor, and then you're a lecturer, then a senior lecturer, then associate professor, and then hopefully professor if you get, promoted up.
In America, they just give those away like candy.
Yes, we just hand those out. Rob's got one, he thinks. Yeah, exactly.
I do see that.
That's part of the problem, right? That we have over here. Yeah.
How did you end up then involved with the Ehrenberg-Bass Institute?
So I was doing my master's and I thought we could do stuff that was important, and I encouraged some other people who are now are fairly famous professors. So I somehow encouraged them to come and live off the pittance that you got, from doing tutorials and come do their masters too. And it sort of just grew from there. But we also won some grants from the Australian Research Council and things. We don't chase that sort of taxpayer funding anymore. We stood up on stage and we showed some results, and that's what industry buys. It doesn't fund academics just to be nice. It goes, oh, that's interesting. I can use that. Can I talk to you? How do I get more of that? My advice to academics when they say, well, how do you get funding from industry? I say, make some discoveries. And then they will fund you. Don't go to them and go, I'm a very clever person and I'm worthy and you should give me this to study this important topic. It doesn't work like that. Industry's a bit like consumers. They know what they like when they see it.
Well, then you found a sweet spot with that in the Ehrenberg-Bass Institute. I want to fast forward a little bit to, I'm sure, a question you get asked all the time, but we have to, which is when you published How Brands Grow, because it's now a classic marketing book. But I'm curious, what inspired you initially to write it, and then has its popularity surprised you?
We wasn't inspired to write it. We were told to. We have advisory boards around the world made up of very senior people who are the companies that sponsor the institute. I think it was the European Advisory Board said, we need a book that we can give to the CFO or the CEO and explain that this time when we're making changes in marketing, this time there is actually some real science behind it. So they said, you've got to write a book. And obviously it needed to be a hardcover book and look good and have a prestigious publisher. And, we got Oxford University Press. So I always joke, that's not too shabby a brand. So that's what it was for. And I remember Alka, executive officer of the board, just rolling her eyes going, oh, they're never going to do that. Because we're classic scientists. We're interested in the latest thing that we're doing. And they wanted something that was about the sort of the importance and meaning of the earlier fundamental findings. It turned out to be very good advice. So, thank you to our advisory board members.
Was it that positive from the very beginning?
Well, it sold out immediately. That's because Oxford University Press printed 1,000 copies.
Okay.
Because they thought...
exclusivity. I mean, you only have...
No, they thought, it's a researchy academic book. You print 1,000 copies, you sell about 500 to libraries around the world, and then, hopefully, eventually you get rid of the other 500. That's the normal model. But obviously it sold, so they had to print a few more copies.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was just so needed. One of those that we might not know as an industry we need until it presents itself. We're huge fans of the book, its principles. We love the double jeopardy law. We work in TV. We're a TV-only agency, so, using reach to drive growth. But I'm curious from your point of view, what principle or foundational kind of belief within had the largest or maybe the most surprising reaction from marketers or those that initially saw it?
Well, the most famous, but that's a bit of a geek joke, because none of them are that famous, but is the double jeopardy law. So that led to sort of industry sayings of penetration is king, importance of reach, and the shock that, wow, okay, that law means where are these super niche, high loyal brands? What? Loyalty's predictable. It's like gravity. Or maybe air pressure is a better example. Air pressure is everywhere. It depends on your altitude and how much you get. That was a shock. Lots of consultants were peddling all these things. The loyalty marketing was very, very big at the time.
Oh, huge. Absolutely.
They said, no, that's not a path to growth. Mm-hmm. That was pretty shocking. Yeah. But we poll, new students and people coming in as new marketing scientists of which law they think is the most surprising. And it's actually that user bases seldom vary. Each rival brand is selling to all sorts of different people, but the same sorts of different people as your competitors. If you're a university student and you've come through a traditional marketing degree, which 99% of marketing graduates on the planet have, That doesn't fit with sort of almost every tutorial. It's been, right, let's decide on our target market rather than going, no, it's already decided for us. Right? We need to go out, do research and find who buys our category. And once we know that, and we should have a deep understanding of that, then we can go on and be good marketers.
Yeah, we talk about this quite often on the podcast. Just even as a marketer, someone working in the industry, and as a consumer, it's embarrassing that I'm not more loyal to the brands that I love. I just had an instance. I'm a big fan of On Cloud shoes, and yet I just recently bought some Hokas. Why do we do those things? It's an interesting little conundrum for marketers to tackle. And I think that and a lot of the other principles are just sort of foundationals. When you get it in your head and you're kind of like, okay, that's just the way the world works and probably not something I can change, your behavior changes in terms of what will drive success and how to try to grow the brand. So the book feels timeless. Marketing science has evolved a lot since the book was initially published, and you did just write a second edition that was very popular. What recent research in that second edition are you most excited about?
Part 2 was written to address, when people would say, well, that's all very interesting, but, France is different, or luxury is different, developing markets is different, financial services is different, durables are different. So that's what that book was written for. For me, the most interesting one is the luxury one because, France is different. Yeah, of course, yes, you speak French, but you still have mass consumer brands and things. But the luxury, that was more plausible. They came up with a logic that sounded, okay, there might be something in this. Because what the luxury people said is, you can't do sophisticated mass marketing if you're a luxury brand. You have to actually deliberately exclude people, which is, I suppose that's classic Kotlerian marketing. But they said, for us, it applies. Because if you exclude people, then they want it more. That drives massive price premiums and things like that, which, there's a plausibility about that. So we went and looked, and it's wrong. But as I say, the real world is a weird place. Our brains evolved over millions of years for survival. There's little shrew-like things up in trees. That's why we're scared of snakes. For the grassland savannas, where we didn't know many people. We lived in little tiny tribes. That's why we love telling stories, because that's our main thing. And we're obsessed with celebrity gossip and stuff because we feel that they're the people in our village. That's the sort of brain we've got. Whereas marketers are selling to mass markets of millions or billions of people with astonishing busy lives who occasionally buy the category. That's weird. That's like the stuff that physicists and chemists study. It's weird stuff. And we make a mistake as marketers of thinking, oh no, they're people like us, so I can just sit in my office and have a think about it. No, you can't. You'll end up selling to, 7 people. If you want to sell to millions, suddenly you're entering a very weird thing that your brain is not equipped for, and you're going to have to rely on science, so it comes up with weird things like a double jeopardy law. If you actually think about it, the double jeopardy law is very weird. It seems to not make sense at all, particularly when you do it for attitudes. So the proportion of people, you ask them, first of all, do you know about this brand or this person or celebrity or whatever? And if they say yes, right, if they say no, obviously they don't know about them, so you can't ask their attitude. But if they say yes, you can ask their attitude. And when you do that, if fewer people have said yes, the attitude score will be a bit lower. And that's like, but why? Why can't this few people just love this person? Like, why can't that be? We now know why it occurs. It's a weird statistical selection effect thing. But that's just not intuitive, is it?
Not at all.
It's not intuitive. Why can't there be, say, a new TV personality? They're very new, so not many people know them. But the people who do know them go, oh, they're fantastic. No. When more people know about that person, then their average attitude score will go up a bit. That's double jeopardy.
Well, Byron, as you mentioned, the principles that you talk about, sometimes they're against marketers' intuition. Marketers like to think that we just know things.
And we shoot ourselves in the foot, right? Because marketers go, it's just intuitive. I should just be able to know it. And then they say, everyone thinks marketing's just intuitive. And the CFO has just said, what do they know? They're not a skilled marketer. It's like, well, you can't have it both ways, right?
Yeah, but we want it. We want it that way.
If it's just intuitive, then anyone can do marketing. You don't need qualification. You don't need a high salary.
Good point.
So what you and the Institute are talking about, it's not always received super positively because sometimes you're challenging belief systems. So what drives you to keep going, Byron Sharp, like with your passion for evidence-based marketing? Does it come from just your career path, or what keeps you going with all of this?
Well, there's a sort of smart-ass sort of part of it. I think any scientist plays that. It's fun knowing stuff that other people don't know. But no, marketing has done amazing. Marketing has lifted billions of people out of poverty. The modern market economy is just an amazing thing. And if we can make a contribution to make that a little bit less wasteful, a little bit more effective, that is a contribution to civilization, which is a fantastic thing. That's pretty motivating. It's actually fun when you see that people are shocked. Americans seem to get more shocked than other countries.
Oh, we're going to talk about Americans. Don't worry. That's coming. But before we do, one thing I've just been dying to talk to you about is marketing research, because I know that evidence-based marketing is a central mission for you at the Ehrenberg-Bass Institute. And your book, How Brands Grow, I know you were maybe even forced to write it, but I loved it. And it really inspired kind of my passion for marketing research. So I wanted to ask you, how do you feel about the current state of marketing research, and how might it need to change or evolve in the future?
Are you talking about academic research?
Yes, academic marketing research, but I'm also curious about vendor-driven research. And I know you have strong opinions here, but both sides. How do you feel about it?
All right, well, let me talk about vendor-driven research, because the market research industry is a wonderful industry, very important, but I'm constantly pointing out to people that isn't, a validation study. Let me tell you a story I've told before. I was years ago in London in the museum of the Wellcome Institute, which is one of the biggest medical funds in the world, billions and billions of dollars. And it largely came from the Wellcome pharmaceutical company, right? Anyway, this museum's on the history of it. And I suddenly stopped the guide and went, but wait on. So, when this guy started and really set up the company, made his fortune, there were no efficacious pharmaceuticals. This is pre-aspirin. Right? We had opiates, we had alcohol, but basically we didn't really have any. And so what was he selling? And she was like, oh, well, hope, sugar, water, alcohol, that sort of thing. Of course, it's the realization. Of course, there's demand. There's sick people with all sorts of ailments. They want something. You can sell something. And so we have to remember a lot of commercial research is just selling stuff because people want it. It doesn't necessarily mean it's been validated. But the best stuff is, the stuff that produces the data that we use a lot is classic. It's the big panels that have been set up, the longitudinally track consumers viewing and buying. Very, very useful. So I'm a big fan of the basic work that market research companies do, which is knowing how to collect quality data. I'm not such a fan of some of the analysis that they do, which is clearly just mumbo jumbo stuff. They even fool themselves, I think. But I'm equally critical of a lot of academic research, which is fashion-driven, produces findings that aren't trustworthy. It's two issues. There's a lot of research that's not trustworthy. No single study is important, right? No single study means anything. Science is built on replications and testing. But there's also studies that you wouldn't even bother replicating because you're like, who cares? I mean, it's just such a silly, trivial question. Why did you choose that question when there's so many important things to study? The answer is poor academics in business schools spend most of their time teaching, but they're promoted on publishing. So they stop teaching, go, quickly, I need to publish something. And they look in the journals and they choose something that is fashionable, topical, something that will impress other academics, because that's the job. Impress some other academics, get it past reviewers and get it into the journal. They're not like Louis Pasteur, who was like, no, there's this problem, right? I need to solve this problem. There are people dying.
Thank you. That's helpful, Byron, because it's a good thing that marketers are interested in research. But when I first started digging into it, I wasn't aware of how things could be twisted, and I still have a lot to learn. But I think it's helpful to hear your perspective on you should be skeptical.
I've messaged you a couple of times going, no, you can't.
I know, Byron, if I get an email that says Byron Sharp commented on your LinkedIn post, my blood pressure goes through the ceiling. You have no idea. I get so scared. I just want to make you proud, Byron Sharp. So I'm trying to be more careful about what I share.
At a recent advisory board meeting there with Bass Institute, Bruce McCall, who used to be the chief marketing officer of Mars, and I think he's very much looking back on his career and looking back on the evidence-based journey that Mars is on, and being quite self-critical, I think. He feels that one of the things he should have put a lot more emphasis on was teaching his marketers how to judge evidence and more about the science. He was really pushing for them to just learn the laws rather than learn how do you judge that something's law-like. And he asked other board members, what do you think evidence-based marketing is? I think what he was getting at is it's not just that you've got some evidence, right? I mean, to use that medical analogy I used in How Brands Grow about how doctors, for thousands of years basically shortened people's lives. That was some contribution, shortening people's lives. It's terrible, right? They were killing people. But they had evidence. I mean, they also had good university trainings and things, but they had evidence. They asked people, what hurts? What have you been doing? What have you been eating? They had some evidence, but they just had an abysmal ability to interpret that evidence. So we should probably talk more about knowledge-based marketing than evidence-based marketing. Marketers are flooded with sort of evidence, but they, oh my goodness, they misinterpret stuff all the time. Wow, our brand's got a higher attitude score. That must be what people must like it. That's what made us big. No, all big. If you're bigger, you get the higher attitude. This interpretation, net promoter score would be classic. It's called net promoter score. It asks people what their likelihood is they would recommend. So it's all about recommendations. No, just because something has the title doesn't mean it is that. Just because the bottle says Wonder Cure doesn't actually mean it is a Wonder Cure. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we crave it, right? Like, especially those of us that consider ourselves performance marketers, which is a genius term for whomever came up with that.
Performance marketing is just physical availability, trying to catch your fair share of the people who are buying today.
Yep, someone's going to get it, so you might as well get your share. And then once you get your share, you probably drove it, whatever tactic led to it. But I think we crave it so badly, the science side of it, that we'll lean into even mistakenly. What we think is evidence, it might not correlate to actual success. Things like NPS, like you suggest. We're craving that answer. We're craving something to bring back to the executive team to prove this worked. This is what we did. Here was the outcome. I need more investment.
But also well-paid executives, they're clever people. They're used to being clever. They tend to think if they can get something, they read the net promoter score. And I think about it. I think, yeah, you're right. We shouldn't ask people if they're satisfied. We should ask them if they'd be willing to recommend that. Yeah, that's good sense. Right, quickly, change our tracker. We'll do that. How does this measure behave? And then you look at it and go, wow, it behaves exactly like a satisfaction measure. Oh. And actually, if you really stop and think about it, if they're not satisfied, and I'm really likely to recommend it. You got to look at the distribution of scores and then realize, gosh, they match perfectly a satisfaction. It's just another satisfaction measure.
Time for a spicy question, Byron. So us Americans, right? And marketing in general in the U.S. has come under fire recently for being called out, for being behind on marketing effectiveness, for really a lack of awareness for things like how brands grow. So what's your opinion on that in terms of the quality of marketing in the U.S.? And don't worry, Angela's not that sensitive. So just let us have it, Byron.
I'm ready.
Look, I don't think anyone can sum up quality of marketing for a whole country. But what I will say is I don't think American marketing is bad, but it doesn't deserve the thing of thinking it's the best in the world. And I think that is a tendency of Americans. I was on stage for Meta or something, and they said, well, so you've got, some of the best marketers in the world in front of you. What do you say? I thought, no, I've got a group of New York marketers in front of me. How do you know? What? It's natural thinking. American marketing is better. No, I don't think that's the truth. Yeah, it's been criticized. Well, there's a long history of it being criticized as being insular. Yes. In fact, there's an article from an angry young academic called Andrew Ehrenberg. And he said, here I am, I'm at this American Marketing Association conference, and I've been put in the international track. I'm always put in the international track. Not that my paper is on anything international. It's because I'm from overseas. And he actually said, he said, I don't know why this is incredible insular, because it's not like American marketing research is any particularly good. I don't know if they invited it back. So there is this belief, if you look at the top-rated marketing journals in the world, they're pretty much all US journals. And this is just natural thinking of, well, they just must be the best. Not that these journals were set up in the 20th century when the biggest economy and most booming economy in the world was American. Partly that legacy.
Well, speaking of being on stage, you're going to be on stage again here shortly in the United States, I think, in Boston, for your How Brands Grow live experience. So what inspired that? How did that come to be?
That has a long history. In fact, I sort of knew I could write How Brands Grow because I've been doing some of the chapters where things, presentations. So that led to I can write the book. And so the Institute does How Brands Grow live for our sponsors. I was thinking it's a magic product because lots of people in a room together, and over 2 days they learn stuff, but they have to make commitments about what does this mean for the business in front of their colleagues. Under COVID, when we moved it to a virtual delivery, we realized it could still work even though people aren't locked in the room together. And then there was this thing of well, what about people who aren't sponsors necessarily, just individuals? And it dawned on us that apart from buying our books, an individual can't buy anything from the Ehrenberg-Bass Institute. So it's like you're sort of stuck unless you're in a sponsor company. And so we thought, well, why don't we take it out to the world? So we've done this. We did this in Singapore and in Bordeaux in France, and now Boston in the States, and we'll do the same thing again next year because it's been such fun and so successful. So people, very senior people coming, and yeah, they love it. It is transformational.
Absolutely. I think we've felt that, not been to a conference, but just in what you publish.
Well, this is, you get to spend 2 days with Jenny and I and Justin and other people, and we do a deep dive. I mean, we cover the fundamentals and how brains grow, but we also cover a lot more application things. It's sort of one thing to say you know something, or you're familiar with it. Then it's another thing to go, oh, can you do the exam on it? Oh, okay. And there's another, could you teach that to someone else? Oh my God, that's different.
It's a new level of education and understanding for sure. So I mentioned before, we work in TV. We're a TV-only agency, and we wouldn't presume to think that TV is right for every brand, of course. But one marketing principle we think is lacking is just attention from marketers in the US on the power of TV. And so I'm curious, how important do you think TV advertising is to modern marketing, and or just your thoughts on the channel or in general?
The discoveries in marketing science are pretty positive for any fast and vast media. And TV is still up there with one of those big media, although it's fragmented and splintered. And well, if you include YouTube and TV, I mean, YouTube is a global TV company, advertising supported. Then you go, I mean, TV is as healthy as it ever was. Actually, I do think TV is going to be big news for marketers in the next decade or so, because all the streamers will become advertising supported.
You see that happening already?
They can't go on losing money forever. So we'll end up with, I don't know, half a dozen big global advertising-supported TV networks that can do they can do IP address-based targeting. So that's a pretty exciting thing. They deliver video and they deliver it on full screen. We know about the levels of avoidance for TV. It's one of the nice things. It's a very trustworthy metric. If you tell us how many impressions we have, we know how many actually translated to real impressions. And that's pretty attractive for a marketer, particularly big audiences. But I suppose, with IP addresses, you can match like cinema, like where a local restaurant goes, but, my catchment area is only this. Can I just hit those households? Yeah, you can do that.
Yeah. It'll be interesting, though, because I think just with the growth of CTV, and you mentioned YouTube, definitely kind of that digital transformation of a space that forced marketers to not hyper-target and have to go broad reach, right? So I think that's one thing that we balance, how consumers view television and therefore how marketers should view television as well. It's a screen on the wall. And those powers that a linear television has or a radio has, and that ability to drive that broad reach, don't lose it on the CTV side. There's all this technology and growth, but reach is a superpower as well.
Well, we manage two assets. We manage mental availability and physical availability. And the performance marketing, the retail media, the work we do in stores, the display, the Google search is all about catching the people who are buying today. And that is an important thing that we have to have, and we have to optimize that. We can, because it's actually really easy to optimize because you see your results immediately. You shut the doors of the store. What happens? Oh, sales stopped. Oh, right. Okay. Maybe we should open the doors. Right? But the other asset we manage is mental availability, and that is way different. That's relying on people's memories, so we don't have to hit them just before they purchase or anything. And we have to hit all of them, even though lots of them aren't going to come in like they just bought from the category. Oh, well, they're not going to come back probably. No, not for quite a while, maybe a year or two, but you still got to refresh their memories because there's some other brands that would like to get into their head as well. And that's a different ballgame. TV has always been a fairly vast reach medium. So even with today's fragmentation and things, it just takes longer. That's fine. Most of us don't have the pressures of we're launching a new movie. If we don't get people in the cinema tomorrow, we're dead. Then that's okay. This media can still do it. It can still deliver real video impressions that put a spotlight on our brand. It can reach everyone. Not tonight, but over a month, over a year, it can do it. Wow, that's nice. And at a really low price for the exposure.
Yeah, and we appreciate the work you've done, Byron, because it, like you said, definitely supports TV. So we've been able to use it to talk about the value of TV for our customers.
The problem, and it's a particularly American problem, they don't understand the difference in physical availability and mental availability. And they think advertising works by, it should show up tomorrow in my sales. Because advertising is supposed to produce sales. This is the logic. I mean, it's very obvious logic, right? If advertising affects sales, I should advertise and then I should see my sales change. But if you go, no, it does, but it does through mental availability and on a population where the proportion of the people who saw your advertising who are in store this week is so tiny. A vast amount of your exposures are not on those people. So you can't use what's happening in store this week to judge that advertising stuff. And that is not well appreciated in America.
We're generally not patient, just in general.
Yeah, everything should bounce around.
Well, Byron, I wanted to end with some closing words of wisdom for American marketers, but I feel like that is perfect. We're going to save that and we're going to share it with all the brands we talk to. That's it for this episode of The Marketing Architects. We'd like to thank Ayana Klaphaki for producing the show and Taylor De Los Reyes for editing. You can connect with us on LinkedIn, and if you find the show valuable, please leave us a rating and review. And if you'd like to hear more from us, subscribe to our weekly email newsletter. It's built for marketers seeking research-first analysis of the latest trends. You can go to marketingarchitects.com/newsletter to subscribe. Now go forth and build great marketing. I know you need to get on with your day. We need to go to bed. In Minnesota, we're in the middle of a crazy thunderstorm too. I can't believe our power's still on.
You're sitting in the dark, yeah.
Yes,
Great.
I know, yeah.
I will go out into some Australian sunshine.
Marketing Architects.